The barn had been standing empty for almost 15 years, sagging a little more into the hillside every winter. The land had just changed hands, and the new owner posted one line in a local farming group: "Free wood, first come first served, before the demolition crew shows up next month." Most people scrolled right past it. One guy didn't. He drove out that same weekend, half expecting rotten, useless lumber. What he found instead was different, and before he even started hauling a single board, he pulled up the same tested building plan he trusted for every project, one out of a library of over 16,000 woodworking plans. Linked in the description and pinned comment below, because wood this good deserved a real plan, not a guess. The main beams were rough-sawn oak, the kind cut from trees that had grown slowly over 80 or 100 years before this barn was even built. That matters more than people realize. Old-growth lumber like this has tight, dense growth rings, because the trees grew slowly in a forest competing for light. Fast-growth farmed pine from a modern lumberyard simply doesn't have that same density. It's a real, physical difference you can feel the moment you pick up a board. Old barn wood is heavier, harder, and far more stable than most new lumber, which is exactly why builders and furniture makers pay a premium for it today. He spent an entire Saturday just walking the barn with a flashlight, checking joints, tapping beams to listen for rot, deciding which sections were actually worth hauling out. Not everything was a barn that old also comes with real risk. Old nails hide inside boards where you can't see them, and hitting one with a saw blade can ruin a blade or worse. Anyone doing this seriously runs a cheap metal detector over reclaimed lumber before it ever touches a saw. That single step alone prevents a huge number of ruined cuts and injuries. By Sunday evening, his truck bed was loaded with enough usable barn board and beam sections for several real projects, more wood than he could have bought new for even a fraction of the price, and wood with a texture, color, and weight that simply isn't available anywhere except through reclaiming it. That plan he'd already pulled up would tell him exactly how to turn these rough barn boards into something that wouldn't fall apart the moment he tried using it. The first project was a farmhouse dining table, 6 feet long, built from the straightest beam sections. This is where the real work started. Reclaimed barn wood isn't ready to use straight out of the truck. Every board needed to be denailed, the surface planed just enough to reveal clean wood underneath without sanding away the character marks and weathering that make barn wood valuable in the first place. That weathering, by the way, isn't random. It's called silvering, a natural graying effect caused by decades of UV exposure and oxidation on the wood's surface. And it's one of the main reasons reclaimed barn wood sells for so much more than plain new lumber at furniture markets. People aren't paying for the wood. They're paying for 100 years of weather baked into the grain. Building the table took most of a long weekend. Following the plan's exact joinery measurements mattered here more than on almost any other project, because barn beams are rarely perfectly uniform in thickness. The way factory lumber is cutting without accounting for that creates a wobbly table fast. The plan accounted for it, with adjustable joint tolerances built directly into the instructions, which saved what would have otherwise been hours of frustrating trial and error. When the table was finished, it didn't look like something built in a garage over a weekend. It looked like a piece someone might pay 4 figures for at a specialty farmhouse furniture store, because in a lot of cases, that's exactly the going rate for authentic reclaimed barn wood furniture like this. The difference was, this one had cost almost nothing beyond the plan itself and a few days of labor. With wood still left over, he moved on to a matching bench set and a run of floating shelves for the same room. This is actually a detail worth knowing if you ever find reclaimed barn wood yourself. The species varies a lot by region and by era. Barns in the Northeast and parts of the Midwest were often framed in oak or American chestnut before a blight wiped out most chestnut trees in the early 1900s, while barns further south and out west leaned more on pine and fir, depending on what grew locally and what the original builders could source cheaply. Knowing the species actually changes how you should work with it. Oak and chestnut are harder on tools and blades, but hold finish beautifully, while old pine is softer, easier to shape, but dents more easily under daily use. The benches came together faster than the table, since the joinery was simpler and he'd already learned the quirks of working with these boards. The shelves took an afternoon, using thinner offcuts that would otherwise have been scrap. By the time he was done, almost none of what he'd hauled out of that barn went to waste. None of this happened by accident, either. The barn owner mentioned that 2 other people had come by that same week, grabbed a truckload of wood with no real plan, and ended up leaving most of it in a driveway a month later, still untouched. Once they realized they had no idea how to actually mill rough reclaimed lumber into anything usable. That's the part almost nobody talks about with reclaimed wood projects. Finding free material is the easy half. Knowing exactly how to de-nail it, plane it without losing the character, and join uneven old beams into something structurally sound is where most people quietly give up. A tested plan doesn't just save time. For a project like this, it's the difference between finished furniture and a truckload of expensive-looking firewood sitting in a driveway. When everything was finally finished, the table, the bench set, the shelves, he sat down one evening and actually added up what it would have cost to buy equivalent pieces new, in that same reclaimed farmhouse style that specialty stores charge a premium for. The number surprised even him. A farmhouse dining table like that, sold as authentic reclaimed barn wood, typically runs $800 to $1,200 at specialty furniture shops. The matching bench set, another $400 to $500. The floating shelves, another $150 or so. All in, the furniture sitting in that room represented somewhere around $2,000 of retail value, built from wood that had been headed for a demolition dumpster that same month. His actual cost was close to nothing: a tank of gas to haul it, some sandpaper, glue, and finish. The barn itself gave the wood away for free, glad to see it used instead of crushed. Here's what actually made this possible, though, and it wasn't luck. It wasn't even really the free wood, since barns like this get demolished constantly and most of that wood ends up in a landfill unnoticed. It was following the exact kind of tested plan he'd already lined up before the first board ever left that barn, the kind that accounts for the quirks of old, uneven, reclaimed lumber instead of leaving you to guess. Most people who grab reclaimed wood without one end up with exactly what that barn owner described: a driveway full of good material and no finished furniture to show for it. That's not a failure of the wood, and it's not a lack of skill either. It's a failure of planning, plain and simple. The gap between a pile of old barn boards and a table worth over $1,000 isn't talent. It's knowing the exact steps someone else already tested before you ever picked up a saw. Sometimes the most valuable furniture in the world is sitting in a barn nobody's looked at twice in 15 years, just waiting for the right plan to bring it back to life.